how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Music Review Podcast. Today we are going to be doing an album review, and the album review will pretty much cover the end of, I guess, this small mini series of chillwave albums or chillwave inspired albums. It will be the latest washed out album titled Purple Noon. And yeah, this was kind of an album I wasn't expecting to be released. I don't know really if it was quite a surprised album, but it didn't really have too much promotion prior to the release. I know some singles came out, and I was pretty happy with them. But yeah, I have some overall mixed feelings that I will get into just here shortly. Before we start, though, I just want to let everyone know the latest Best Orange track of the week for the week of August 15th is out. If you have not listened to that, go ahead and check it out. Also, I did drop a worth a listen over Tori Maw's Anything in Return, which I did which I basically did to be the second part of this little chill wave like mini thing. So if you're interested in Tori Maw or that album, I revisited and kind of just went over my thoughts on it. So yeah, let's get started. All right, so we are on episode 21. The album is Purple Noon by Washed Out. This is, like I was saying earlier, the third part of like this small little, I guess, tangent that I went on with Chillwave on here, or Chillwave inspired things, because really Chillwave is kind of not really a genre that is, I guess, too concrete. It's kind of more of a loose, I guess, thing to call a specific sound. But anyways, yeah, that started with the George Clanton and Nick Hexum collab album, which I thought I enjoyed. And then I covered a little bit of the classic, I think one of the most iconic chillwave albums, Anything in Return by Tori Moore. And then also Washed Out is now on here. Now, there's certainly way more to the story of chillwave. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to say like I'm authority on this stuff. I just think this is an interesting thing, and we're in 2020, and these albums are still being kind of released and somewhat relevant. So yeah, and if you are not familiar with Washed Out, I'll just kind of do a little bit of a brief synopsis. Washed Out is an American singer-songwriter and producer and master's degree holder. His name is Ernest Weatherly Green Jr. Washed Out is the title of the artistic project, and according to Wikipedia, he started producing music, I guess, seriously after not being able to have much luck finding a job as a librarian, as the goal was to be a librarian when he graduated from grad school. But anyways, after taking some time to produce some music and experiment here and there, in 2008 he released a lo-fi project under the name Lee Weather. However, the next year in the summer, his other project, Washed Out, made some waves on the MySpace scene after being discovered by some bloggers, which I think is pretty interesting, mainly due to the fact that MySpace was such a huge thing for the music of the 2000s and the 2010s going forward. And when I look back and think about the prominence of MySpace back then, and the effect it had on music, and what a lot of these scenes owe a lot of their credit to, in kind of pioneering how music is taken and consumed on the internet. You had bands like the Arctic Monkeys in 2004 breaking out after having a huge internet following. And then you have, of course, like the post-hardcore, emo, scene, pop punk community that formed on MySpace as well. When, bands like My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, Paramore were at kind of like the pinnacle of alternative music almost. And that has fizzled out, but that certainly was something that was prevalent back then. And you even see it here with the music of Washed Out, basically a pioneer in what happened to be chillwave, and that effect of chillwave throughout the whole entire indie music scene was quite profound as well. And something like having a MySpace profile all the way back in 2009 kind of led to some success. But nonetheless, I kind of just went off on that tangent about MySpace. Um, but in 2009, Washed Out released two EPs, which one of them featured the track Feel It All Around, which was widely successful, I'd say, commercially and culturally. Commercially, you don't even have to really look that deep into it. Portlandia, the successful comedy skit series on IFC, was the opening music track. Kind of was perfect for that show, being Portlandia being this on the nose satire on hipster and indie culture. Now, I mean, there's more inside jokes about the city of Portland, but nonetheless, the effect that chillwave kind of had, and it being for these bloggers to write about, and it kind of like being an inside thing, probably at its formation, I thought it fits quite well. And then culturally, um, that kind of touches on the culturally, but I'd say that even to my college years, looking back on Chillwave and kind of like when it was at its peak almost, I remember having conversations with people, and then no matter what really the musical tastes were, they knew the song Feel It All Around for a multitude of reasons. One of them being mainly most of them were just potheads, but and it's a good song to set the mood to. But nonetheless, I feel like "Feel It All Around" was probably a moment in that history of chillwave that is quite profound. But nonetheless, Washed Out put out a debut album in 2011 after being signed to Sub Pop, which is a pretty prevalent record label. And then later in 2013, he released the famous Paracosm, which featured tracks like It Feels Alright. I don't think Paracosm was as commercially successful as the debut album, which was titled Within and Without. Now, me personally, I think I got more into around 2013 with the Paracosm release. I guess this is around the time I even discovered Tori Ma, and I kind of touched on that in the Worth a Listen review. Um, I think maybe the track "It Feels Alright" was always one that really stuck with me. To this day, I literally like that song. I ended up, I think, in late 2013, seeing them catching Washed Out live, kind of just on accident, or not really on accident, but I kind of just walked by the stage at a music festival. Um, RIP to Fun 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 Fest. That was a great one. Anyways, and I just kind of was kind of just enthralled and just entertained by the whole entire Washed Out vibe and sound and the confidence and the stage presence of them. They weren't too flamboyant or anything, but they just went on there and did a good job and played everything almost perfectly. It sounded incredible, and to the vocals, I remember the live sound of the vocals was just incredible. The instrumentation was good, but nonetheless, I kind of just went on a tangent there again. But in 2013, Paracosm was released. That was a sophomore album. And then there was a bit of a break. In 2017, that's how long we had to wait until Mr. Yellow was released. And Mr. Yellow was interesting because it seemed like it was kind of a really planned out album. I think I went back and listened to it, and I think it was kind of like a really ambitious album for Washed Out. And I don't really know if it ever got quite the critical acclaim or attention or just relevance that it kind of was seeking. For some reason, the album was released on another label, Stone's Throw, I think. I don't know what went on there, why it wasn't done on Sub Pop, because Purple Noon was released on Sub Pop. So not sure if that was some label shenanigans going on, but uh, I'd say when I went back and listened to Mr. Yellow, um, I'm not gonna front. I think the album Mr. Yellow is overall a more ambitious and better project from Purple Noon. Um, Overall, I think Mr. Yellow had some more, just more rhythmic expression and diversity. It seemed to had indulged in like some dance grooves that had some more overall energy compared to Purple Noon. It seemed to utilize more colorful soundscapes that featured like samples, woodwind instrumentation at times, auxiliary percussion, auxiliary percussion. Um, so not just straight up drum sounds. And then overall, it's more of an abstract album. Overall, it just seemed more experimental and ambitious. And I feel like that wasn't really the case on Purple Noon. I think Purple Noon was more of a straightforward release. I'm not sure if that's really what Sub Pop really wanted from Washed Out to release, and maybe that's why Mr. Yellow was the thing. But yeah, overall, I feel like before I go into detail on Purple Noon, uh, it's more of a step back, I think. And overall, I think there are highlights and there are great moments on this album, especially on those two lead singles that were released, "Too Late" and "Time to Walk Away." And when I heard those two songs, it made me really excited, especially taking into account that I wasn't expecting a washed out album to release this year. And it kind of seems like the album rolled out quite quickly. It's like, all right, this is happening and something to look forward to in 2020. Um, And when I first put it on, I guess my process is kind of just like listening to it passively, doing something. I like to ride my bike, so I go on a bike ride or I listen to it in the car. And then at some point, I kind of just formally write down my thoughts and then listen to it again, and maybe once or twice more after that. But anyways, the more I kind of like started getting deep into like my thoughts on this, I kind of just figured that this album really just has really like lethargic moments. A lot of the tracks lack some energy. A lot of the vocals, like the melodies and like the style it's sung in, is just really redundant at times. And I know Washed Out has a style with like the soaked reverb and layered harmonies on the vocals, which sound really pretty. Um, but when it's over like a very slow, dragged out, track, it can feel a little comatose. So let me take you guys through the beginning on Too Late. Too Late, I dug the track overall. It starts off with an ethereal sounding intro. The music has a character of like taking deep breaths. It kind of just something that's done. It just kind of gives me that impression. Immediately I'm kind of thinking, oh, okay, it's kind of like an emotional album or something like that, because it's real. The soundscape is kind of cinematic. The drums sound great. I think it's like Depeche Mode. Like the track really picks up when that percussion kicks in, and then immediately we get some typical washed out vocals with the layered with the harmonies and the reverb. Um, I love the melodic bass synths that guide the chorus in this track. The track overall has a sense of groove, and especially in the verses. Overall, I like the energy and the percussion that this track brings. Um, this is when this album shines, when there's some sort of like engine, pushing these tracks. Face Up is another decent sound I liked as well. It's introduced with like these 80s keyboard sound synth tones. Overall, it has a lighter texture too. It features a really nice Peter Hook melodic bass line thrown in. I like the stylistic choice on that. The vocal lines are rhythmically similar to Too Late as well, so you kind of get a little bit of that redundancy in the vocals here. Um, the track also features like drum machine tones that are there for effect, like those big block hit sounds. It's a down tempo track as well, so it's more ethereal sounding overall. It also features like these a chorus soaked to guitar passages as well at times. The song is pretty consistent most of the time. There's not too much development or climax, so I feel like Face Up is kind of like we still have a lot of the things I enjoy on this album, but we kind of get hints of what later I feel like is a bit of its Achilles heel. Time to Walk Away is a pretty energetic track as well. It has like these syncopated tropical grooves that outline the track, and it has a bit of a dancey nature to it that comes from like the syncopated synth chord percussion that takes a little subtlety from reggae or reggaeton. Um, More similar sounding vocals. I like the melodic lines that are sung. They're quite earwormy. Um, Definitely the song is trying to go for that big chorus sound. There's a really loud vocal mix, especially in the chorus, that's accompanied with like these steel drum sounds that are just banging. Um, this is more of like a straightforward poppy washed out song, so if there's such a thing as that. So this is quite accessible in my opinion. Um, there's a more relaxed and subdued bridge with an instrumental passage. It releases some of the tension from the rest of the track. Overall, this track was not as energetic as something as like Too Late, though. So we kind of like are starting to dive more deep into like the lack of energy. Um, Paralyzed was an interesting track. I thought there's some great elements on it. This is the immediate after Time to Walk Away. This is the track. I like the intro with the soft lo-fi, and I like the transition after that into the groovy arrival that features the vocals and the percussion. The song overall has a sense of like some R&B elements. There's like a hookiness to it as well. The chorus is very sappy, especially in the lyrics. So yeah, the R&B stuff is prevalent here. The arrivals to the verses seem to be the best parts. So whenever like the transition from the intro to the verse, that's great, and then from the chorus back to the verse, those arrivals are really good. Um, the reoccurring motif that's sung in the vocals is very nice as well. The pre-chorus or chorus, it's kind of like a hybrid, has like a nice faded effect to it as well. And then in the outro, I feel like there's something I wasn't too fond of. Like there's like this whistle melody that's piercing. It's a little eerie, but not in a good way. So the next track, "Reckless Desires," is right after that. I found like this track had some great elements as well. I like the plucky synth bass tones that are used as accompaniment in the intro. This track has more of this light tropical flavor with the syncopated chord progression thrown in as well. I think those moments are nice. I like the softer dynamics in the vocals, so we have some contrast that finally. I feel like this is again more of a straightforward, washed out track, but the chorus has a sense of comatose in it, and it's not as sensitive, or it's just kind of predictable at this point. The snare at times the production sounds a little bit cheap. Um, that pre-chorus really makes you anticipate what's about to happen, but the chorus just quite doesn't deliver or pay off. I'm very mixed on this track. There's some vaporwave elements I feel too. Um, and then we have, I feel like, the weaker parts after this: Game of Chance and Leave You Behind. I won't go thoroughly into them. Game of Chance feels a little bit of, has moments of like this corny mall instrumental music. You've been there when you walk into like some sort of like outdoor mall or just like a store where they're just trying to be inoffensive as possible, and they're just playing like these pretty instrumental melodic music, but it just kind of serves that purpose only. Um, Leave You Behind, I didn't feel like that was much of a highlight. I guess here I'm starting to notice too some absence of low end in the percussion at times. Doesn't really help with the lack of energy, unfortunately. Um, yeah, so Don't Go, I feel like was interesting as well. I like the muffled percussion idea in the intro. The layered vocals that come out in here as well. The harmonies are clear and interesting. It sounds great. The verses have a sense of tension as well. And then the chorus goes for that big arrival. So it's that technique is used here again. It's a little too down tempo, but there's a lack of energy. I feel like that's the Achilles heel here. It just sounds a little too sleepy. The low end sounds a little bit dry too. Um, there are some mysterious bright synth melodies that are pretty in the bridge. It's a little bit less lethargic at this point. And then Hide. is a highlight here. I'm really glad Hyde came here because did we need it at this point in the album? It's a nice change of character on this track. I like the lead guitar riff intro. It's like alternative indie pop sounding. It's more upbeat, energetic and rhythmic, low end that's kind of just driving the song. There's some nice tension in the pre-chorus, and then after that, it pays off with like this critical instrumental breakdown that features like some abnormal guitar run. It's unusual. It's not bad. I like that that was in here. It served the song well. The second chorus has more of an exposed vocal moment as well. The bass drum sounds solid here. This is probably one of the better tracks after the singles that were released, and probably has the most potential for any possible prominence and like any airplay on like indie radio or something. And then we're pretty much at the end of the album. Haunt is the ending track. Um, Haunt was kind of middle of the road for me, and there are some things I liked about it. There's an unsteady synth chord progression that introduces the track. Some nice melodic instrumentation after the vocal passages. Um, the track has like this prolonged build up, and it kind of just goes essentially for that big chorus at some point. And the chorus is definitely going for that big arrival and sound. But the track does show some dynamic contrast. It cools down after the chorus, and it calls for more anticipation for that arrival later again of the chorus. But the chorus is this lush with many layers and rich synth textures piece of music. And then the track kind of goes for this like forced embracement of like some dread or daunting sadness, and it kind of just doesn't hit the mark too much for that. I don't really feel it, unfortunately. Um, and yeah, we are at the end of the album at this point. Overall, I thought this was not as enjoyable as Mr. Yellow or maybe even Paracosm. Um, it's probably one of the lower washed out projects, but I do think there's a lot of great tracks on here. Don't get me wrong. This track, there are moments on this album that I'm wanting more, but unfortunately, the more doesn't deliver. Or I have to wait until the next project. Hopefully, it's sooner rather than later, because I do like Washed Out overall as a project and a sound. I think there are highlights to the music that and style that I think are quite profound and important. Um, but unfortunately, the lower moments on this album kind of just like were too sleepy and too lethargic. Unfortunately, I'm feeling a 5 out of 10 on this one. But yeah, that concludes the review for the most part. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to some more music out in the future. I'm still optimistic on Washed Out overall, so just take the opinion as a grain of salt. Unfortunately, I just wasn't too fond of some of the lower points on the album, but there are some great parts of the album, and I think if you were ever interested in any chillwave synth pop, washed out music in general, there are moments on this album that you will like, and you might even like the album more than me. If you have never really been into like this dreamy aesthetic, you're probably not gonna take in much from this. But anyways, yeah, I have some more reviews coming up down the pipeline. Some mainstream country. Finally, probably gonna do the Dreamland Animals, what Class Animals album. Two, if there's anything you guys ever want to suggest, go ahead and hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. Just search the music reviewer. On Instagram, the handle is the Music Rev 45, and then on Twitter, it is the Music Review 4. Nonetheless, I think you should probably find me pretty easily just by searching the music reviewer. But yeah, thank you for joining me on the end of this episode. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys soon.